Yeah, it's sharing right now. It's not, yeah, there I can see it now.
Super.
Sharing right now. Oh. Okay. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Kabir, and I'm with Barlever Research Group. I will be your host today. Today we have David Schmidt. He will be talking about farm financial health, making smart decisions before the 2026 season. Before we dive in, I'd like to take a moment to thank all the counties that support and fund us. Because of them, we are able to organize webinars like these for you. A quick housekeeping item. If you have any questions during the presentation, please hold them until the very end. We will have 15 minutes for Q&A session. However, if something urgent comes up and you need my help during the webinar, feel free to type it in the chat section. I will be keeping an eye on it throughout the session. Without further ado, let's begin today's webinar. And now please join me in welcoming our special guest speaker. Over to you, David.
Hello, everyone. Yes, it's David Schmidt with MNP. I'm a farm management consultant with MNP here in Camrose, Alberta. I cover the north half of the province, and I have a team of us in throughout Western Canada. I come from about 16 years of agriculture industry finance experience, and have an array of background and experience in exactly what I'm going to be presenting today. So today we've got ourselves here as the farm management consulting team. Our core plan and intention in the industry is to help farm operations with their analysis of their operations and plans and solutions to improve their businesses to move forward. Here's our team. We're spread across, this is our Alberta team. We're spread across Alberta, mostly in Lethbridge and Red Deer, and then we sprinkle into the southern Saskatchewan and slightly into BC as well. So we're living in interesting times. And what are those interesting times? Well, we're living in a rising interest rate environment or ever-changing interest rate environments. I'm sure land prices are always part of the conversation as well. Volatile weather patterns. Of course, we're with farming. Weather is always a challenge. Topics that we often hear about, obviously, is commodity price volatility, technology, adapting to technology. These are all areas that are ever changing. And a lot of what I'm going to be talking here today about is financial fluency and financial resiliency. It's an interesting slide where showing the last 40 years from left to right along the bottom there, with revenue being the light green and expenses being the darker green. And then that orange line along the bottom, net income. So at the end of the day, it takes a lot more capital, a lot more money to create a profit, but the expenses are right there behind the revenue. And then I'd like to attract your attention to that orange line. That's net profitability. So it's definitely difficult to generate a net income, and it hasn't increased along with how much more money it takes to generate that net income. So it's significantly more risk over the last 25 years. So here's an interesting little tidbit. Industry is changing. In the 1970s, it took about 1,500 bushels to buy that truck. And if I could hear and see you guys live, I'd like to ask, what do you guys think buying a truck today is going to cost you? Well, obviously, it's going to cost a lot more. So this is part of the ever-changing. Take 7 Super B loads or $80,000 at $7 a bushel. So an interesting interesting little definitely change, a lot of change there. So what is business resiliency? And the reason you need to do things differently. Well, business resiliency it refers to an organization's ability to anticipate, prepare for, respond to, and recover from disruptive events. As highlighted above, that's a lot of what financial risk in ag and falling is costly and painful. The goal is to avoid being knocked down. We don't want to look like this guy. We don't want to get knocked down. We want to be able to be resilient. We don't want to get knocked down at all. If we can be nimble and avoid pitfalls and to be able to pivot quickly is the whole part of the reason of what I do and what's important to become a resilient business. Here's 4 pillars that we challenge ourselves with every day: strategy, financial management, risk management, and benchmarking. Those are the 4 areas that we spend a lot of time on and what I want to talk about today. So under strategy, how do we deal with bias? Is that something that we think about sometimes? Business resiliency to an organization's ability to anticipate, prepare for, and respond to. But how does bias land within that? Biases can hinder an organization's capacity to respond effectively to crisis and adapt to changing circumstances. To be more resilient, you may have to alter the way you make your decisions. So your brain is a highly efficient, fully automated system for deciding what you think is right or what you think is wrong. And often when we hear somebody talk, we often have already made up our mind if we feel they're right or if they're wrong before they're even finished speaking. So that's a challenge that we make to ourselves and I would make to you is how do we avoid having a biased opinion, but to listen to and to continue learning, to think outside the box. Social media bias is often known as kind of when you look at your feed, let's say you're on X or on social media on Twitter, what you have in your feed is what you like, what you enjoy, what you agree with. But you never change the way you think by only looking at what you agree and what you believe in. Sometimes we have to change our bias by understanding new ways of thinking. We're gonna try this Mentimeter. I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of time. Bring out your phones. Scan that QR code or go to Mentimeter and see. We're gonna try and see if this is gonna work for us. To see if I've got a couple questions that we're gonna jump to here in a second. Once you guys have scanned that and you're in that slideshow or poll question, and then I'll skip to the next slide. So I'm going to give you just a couple seconds here to jump into that, and we'll jump to the actual question that I have on the next slide. And Kabir, I don't know if you can do it as well. Might be easiest if we have someone doing it live with me.
Yeah.
Let me know if that's working. So I just scanned it myself here as well.
Yeah, it's working.
So I'll go ahead and answer that question for all of you that are on the call here with us.
Yeah,
And
people are saying it's working for everyone.
Super. So I see some people are already answering the question. So the question there is, your farm's production plan always assumes adequate rainfall, or is it biased, or is it calculated risk? So I'll go ahead and answer that question for everybody that wants to, and we'll have the results here live on the screen. So We have a bias. Mother Nature doesn't take requests. That's a great point. One person, so that's three people have answered with that. One person said, not biased. Optimism is part of the strategy. Yeah, I like that. 0 people are saying it depends. Was the plan written during a wet year? That's an interesting point, but nobody thinks that's the case. And 2 people are saying it's biased and needs a better weather app. Yeah, I would agree. Most farmers I find have at least three weather apps on their phones, so they're checking them against each other all the time, and it sounds like they need an even better one. Can you see how many people are on the call there, Kabir?
Yeah, there's 15 people I see.
Okay, so we've got I'm going to scold you guys. Most of you aren't getting in on the fun here. We only got 8 people on the actual question there on the poll. We'll continue forward, although there's another couple of questions going forward, so we're gonna come back to that. So keep that window open
Do
on
you
your
want to go
phones.
back to the barcode if some people were not
Yeah,
able to
maybe,
scan it?
yeah. We'll give another chance to people that haven't been able to scan it.
Or like
Give you a
people
couple.
can just go to the website, people
Yeah,
who
they can
don't
go
know
to
how to scan the barcode.
yeah they can go to the website. They can enter that code 15909337, or they can scan that QR code and do it on their phones. And then I have a couple more of those poll questions further into the presentation. But I'll continue forward there. So challenges with biases is they impair our risk assessment, they delay our response. Uh, anchoring and groupthink can cause organizations to cling to outdated plans. So that's a delayed response to crisis. Sometimes we're just so stuck in, and we've got the blinders on that we don't think outside of what we're seeing right in front of us. Adequate scenario planning, we can't do that with the biased way of thinking. Poor communication and collaboration. We sometimes have very small circles of feedback, and we don't collaborate well outside of that. And resource misallocation. So that would be a big thing in farming is we're not putting the money towards what's important and what's going to help us become better farmers and have better business owners. Environmental scan of agriculture. It's interesting here. Here's just a picture of all the different people pointing at the strategy. What are we doing here? What's the plan going forward? So environmental scan seeks to increase understanding of trends, projections, opportunities, and challenges that impact the agriculture industry. Through the scan, try to identify, have we considered this on our farm? What tactics could we consider to lower the risk? This comprehensive approach allows organizations to gain a big picture view of their operation and keep them informed and help them make decisions and improve performance and achieve their goals. So here's a lot of the items that we would use on that type of environmental scan. Cybersecurity is becoming more and more important, but these are all areas that are risk to agriculture. I'm sure there's a few on there that you guys are identifying that would be ones that would be affecting you. So I have another question. I have another poll question. So go back to that window. It should open up. You can type in the Mentimeter there. What were the biggest surprises you faced in the last 2 years? Anybody else have any? I put the commodity prices on there. Anybody else have any that you would be challenged with? Yeah, tariff war. Yeah, I would agree with that. fuel costs. Major equipment breakdowns. Yeah, that would be very important. China, I like that one. I'll leave that one. Trump, I see another one there. Lightly. I would agree with both of those. Definitely impacting the farming industry. Absolutely. Weather and drought. Be curious where that was, but absolutely for sure there's been some weather and some drought in the last couple of years. All right, I'm going to continue forward. Strategy. So here's a quick viewpoint of what strategy would mean to me and what I think it should mean to you as well. So what's your vision? What are the underlying obstacles? What's the strategic direction? So the proposed strategies dealing with the underlying obstacles, and what's the action plan? Then obviously going back to the beginning and keeping that action plan live. I put this is an AI pictorial representation of financial management and agriculture. I thought it was quite funny. Rounding up your dollars. It's like herding cattle, keeping everything moving in the right direction. Managing money is like fixing a fence, ignoring the holes, budget leaks, and your profits will wander off like stray calves. So financial fluency. What source? Back to the Mentimeter. So there's 5 different areas there. What source of financial information drives your financial decisions? So I'd be curious on your farms, on your we got some people saying you bet. So it looks like bookkeeping is a popular one, internal bookkeeping. One person said accountant prepared financial statements. We got one person saying bank statements. And one says operational reports. And 5 people saying internal bank bookkeeping. So that to me would mean that the internal bookkeeping is fairly up to date and is current, keeps you current, and is allowing you to see live information. So financial fluency means understanding and using financial information to make responsible profit decisions. Using those concepts to make those decisions is super important, especially in an ever-changing, high-risk environment like farming. Financial statements are the gold standard for stakeholders when it comes to evaluating the financial health of a business, but there are 2 primary challenges, and those are obviously inconsistent structure and timeliness. Most times, most businesses, they wouldn't see their financial statement from their accountant until at least 4 or 5, and sometimes even 6 months or longer than that since the year end. So we're talking about some dated information. Within those financial statements, here are kind of the 4 primary pieces of a financial statement: the balance sheet, the income statement, the statement of cash flow, and the notes of the financial statements. So just a couple comments that I'd like to make on financial statements. Here's an example of a financial statement with revenue at the top, and then you have your expenses broken all line by line item, and then your net earnings at the bottom. But I would not consider this to be an agricultural tailored financial statement. An agriculture tailored financial statement would look like this. We'd have revenue at the top, we'd have production expenses broken out separately from all the expenses, And those production expenses would be for your crop operation, your seed, fertilizer, and chemical, and your risk management to your crop insurance. So that would be in your crop operation production expenses. And there'd be a separate schedule if you're a diversified or a mixed operation. You'd have the livestock operation as a separate one, and that would be for livestock purchases, vet bills, and feed would be the three main categories under that. And then you'd have labor, power, machinery broken out separately, and you'd have land, buildings, and finance broken out separately. So you'd have 4 separate buckets of expenses, not just one giant one. The importance of this is to be able to garner some key ratios, to have an ability of reading those financial statements year over year and being able to compare how is my gross margin doing. So your gross margin would be your revenue less those production expenses, and that's your gross margin. So am I staying within that 50 to 60%? And then the contribution margin, so that's after the labor, power, machinery. How am I doing there? What percentage of the revenue are within that bucket? How is my operating profit doing? These are key ratios and a few examples that would be important to be able to track how are you doing year over year, and which one am I head on, or which one am I behind on? Where am I overspending and where am I underspending? So here's some key ratios as well, just to give you an understanding. If all the percentages are below target, business isn't generating enough revenue. If only some percentages are below, expenses are too high, or business structure is a concern. So these are a couple areas just to focus on. So gross margin, what's the benchmark? What's the contribution margin? What's the benchmark? You can see on the right there, there's in the red 55% of gross margin you should be left with. Are you above or below that? And how is it comparing year over year? Farm financial systems. So do you have any type of systems within your farm? A strong financial system allows clients to see financial results in real time. So that go back to your bookkeeping or your reporting, and then be able to make those future impact of decisions. How do they impact you? This is a loop of structure that I keep with a lot of my clients. So we spend time in different times of the year in each one of these boxes. Financial statements. If you have, I'll use a time of year. If you have a December 31st year end, well, then you'd have your financial statements likely between kind of that April and June. But before that, you want to be able to spend some time to forecast what's going to happen going forward, what's going to happen in 2026. And then bookkeeping, how am I going to track that to see how we're doing along the way and make sure I'm tracking my revenue and my expenses. And then spend time post-harvest to get a live understanding of how did we do? How did the crop do? How did the livestock do? And how does our revenue test against expenses? And then obviously to close the loop, you're going to get financial statements from the accountant to give you a full view of that would include amortization and some of those non-cash expenses. Here's a snapshot of what a post-harvest would look like. So we've got this farm's 9,480 acres. I don't know if you can see that on your screen there. So they farm 9,480 acres. They've broken out their acres and these crops. These are the yields that they're going to say that they said they got over that course of that year. So this is post-harvest, would be between having their bookkeeping done and having their financial statements. So this would allow us to track what's the revenue that was generated and what did we forecast you were going to do earlier in the year. So we built that forecast, and here's our actual. So we're going to come back and test our actual of how you got there. This is the production expenses. So again, this is a crop farm. Here we're tracking. This is the forecast, and here's what they actually did, because they kept their bookkeeping up to date, so we can see exactly what their production expenses were, their gross margin, is going to be about $290 an acre. I'll go back one step. They produce just shy of a $500 revenue per acre, and they're generating a gross margin of $290 an acre, a combined total of 2.7 million spread across those 9,400 acres. So they're slightly ahead if we compare to where they were going to be. We forecasted they were going to be at 2.4 million, and their gross margins at 2.7. So they're tracking at about just under $300,000 ahead. And this is where the rubber meets the road, is how they do on their labor power machinery, how they do on their land building and finance against forecast. Were we ahead? Were we behind? Were we realistic? That's often the conversation that we talk about, is were we realistic? And then how were earnings? Did we track ahead? And any other revenues within the farm? And then obviously right down to the bottom of the page, how are the net earnings? And you'll hear us, and you would hear your banker sometimes talk about EBITDA, fancy term for a very simple equation. It's earnings before interest, taxes, and amortization. So this is the true cash that you would have in your farm to make payments. So this operation has a debt service requirement. They've got payments and interest and principal payments of 174,000, and they have 451,000 to make those payments. So we've gone back and taken the net earnings, added back in the interest, the tax, and the amortization, and we arrive at a $451,000 free cash flow, essentially, but the EBITDA. And their debt service coverage ratio is going to be 2.59. We forecasted they were going to be at 1.23, but they arrived at the end of the year at a 2.59. So this is you'd hear bankers talk about this a lot. For every dollar of payment you want to have $1.25 to make that payment. $1.25, 1.25 would be the ratio at the bottom of the barrel. You don't want to be below that. Well, this farm is at 2.59. So they're healthy. They've got a good, healthy debt service ratio. Access to credit. Obviously, we'd all love to be able to operate with our own cash, but access to credit is going to get you ahead faster and have the ability to grow or to maintain. So something that my background, I was an agriculture banker before I was a farm management consultant. I worked with a couple different organizations, but held really good relationships with clients, and that was a very important aspect of my role. And I would say that's an even more important aspect of a farm's role, of the main stakeholders of a farm, is to keep those bankers, your banker, your primary banker, have a good partnership with them, maintain regular communication. I would say probably the most important part of this slide is the share good news. That's easy. That's the easy part. But share the bad news. Share we're in July and we had a hailstorm come through, and it looks like we're going to lose 80% of our crop to hail. You gotta call that banker up and keep that relationship live, because the earlier that banker, that relationship manager has that information, the bigger the toolbox is of tools that he has or she has to help you through that challenge. They can provide. There's tons of tools there, but once that date comes where your payments are due and you haven't communicated and you don't have the funds to make those payments, well, then there's no more tools. It becomes a very, very big challenge for that creditor, that banker, that relationship manager to be able to help you. So this is I would say a very, very important aspect of a farming operation. I haven't found many farms in my time in the industry that don't borrow any money. There's always some that borrow little or not a lot, but most farms borrow money regularly. Outcome of a great relationship with your creditor, with your relationship manager. Restructuring debt. There's a timely ability to do that. Believe it or not, better interest rates for clients that communicate better, that have a good relationship. That comes into consideration when we talk about management style or management strengths. But these are all important aspects of having a great relationship with your creditor. Okay, so two aspects of accessing credit: liquid. Obviously, liquidity is important. You need you need to have current assets to pay your current liabilities. You need cash or or inventory to pay for your operating line or your crop inputs. And having the ability to debt service principal payments which would be long term. So two different aspects of borrowing money, and they overlap at times, but are fairly separate. So what does liquid mean? Well, having good liquidity would mean exactly these two things. Are your assets frozen? Are they hard to turn into cash, or are they like water? You don't want to be having to use this metaphor here where you're having to melt those ice cubes before you can use the cash to pay your bills, to pay the fuel bill, to pay the crop input retailer. Those things are all important to pay for those parts. Interesting slide. This is across Canada, and it's showing in billions, but there's actually 3 zeros missing there too, so times another 1,000. This is how total liabilities have grown over the last 40 years, grown from 200 or 20 billion. I guess it's 20 million, but really it's 20 billion, all the way up to 160 billion in the last 40 years. So it's taking a lot of capital. Assets have become much more expensive, and it's taking a lot more borrowing power to continue farming. EBITDA. I just talked about EBITDA there. So earnings before interest, taxes, and amortization. And 40 years ago, we had a 60% EBITDA. So we had a lot of cash left over when we've paid the bills to make payments. And as you can see, it's deteriorated over the last 40 years. And most recently in 2024, it was 21%. So we're at a third of what it was 40 years ago. So just a lot more risk again, and a lot less profitability is what that speaks to. I thought this was really, really interesting. There's a quote: "The half-life of lessons learned from a financial crisis is about 10 years." It came from Dr. Danny Knefelter, The Agriculture Credit Situation. So that came from a book. After the farm financial crisis of the 1980s, the Office of the Controller of Currency found that 70% of banks were evaluating borrowers' accrued net income in 1990. By 1995, the number had dropped to 50%. As conditions improved, memories faded, and competition heated up. So of the group here, by this rule, within 10 years after a crisis, 50% will have forgotten the pain and lessons. It's quite interesting how hard times are forgotten quickly, and a lot of optimism continues forward. Extended boom periods tend to follow by a cleansing period of about 3 years, and a hangover can extend beyond that. Fortunately, really serious industry-wide problems occur only every 20 to 30 years. So that's definitely fortunately. Here's a debt structure that I would not recommend. In fact, somebody internally here called this a dog's breakfast. Very transactional based. There's a lot of loans there. Would not be conducive to having good debt servicing ability. It's not what I would consider not to be a good debt structure. There's a lot better structures that can be applied for and put in place. It comes back to that great relationship with your creditor. Risk management. So here comes one of our last poll questions. Last year, how did you decide on your crop risk management? I want to go back to this as well. So did you choose the same as the year prior, or did you evaluate alternative coverage options based on potential impact of those events? Good for you guys. That's awesome. That's the right answer. A lot of the time we choose the same. We just choose the exact same year over year. It doesn't really impact. We don't evaluate, don't take into consideration what's changed, where there are other options. Agri-stability is a major cornerstone of what risk management would mean to me. Crop insurance obviously is equally as big. There's a lot of offerings out there. Crop insurance would be, if you're in Alberta, which I think most of us would be, AFSC crop insurance is a big part of that, but there's other potential options out there too. Global Ag Risk Solutions, so that's GARS. Originally originated in southern Saskatchewan, but they cover a large swath across southwestern Canada. And somewhat newer to Western Canada is Ag i3, would be one that I would look at or look for to maybe test with, but to evaluate coverage is, I think, important to be able to see what's out there. And then hail coverage, third-party hail coverage outside of your primary crop insurance provider it would also be something that could be looked at. I thank you guys for going in those polls and showing the results. I think it's an interesting little case study for us to understand how other people think too. So it brings back to that bias. So how do we test the plan? Where would we rather test the plan? Would we rather test the plan in a boardroom or at your kitchen table or in your office or my office? Or would we like to wait until we see what the plan has happened and we see a crop failure and not really knowing how our plan's going to unfold, if our crop insurance is going to cover that crop failure or that hailstorm that came through? Or would we rather want to have an opportunity of testing that plan and understanding at what point do we come below break even? How far does our crop have to come down in price or yield before we come below break even? Or what happens if we have a hailstorm? Does our coverage cover us right to break even? So having an understanding of your crop insurance and your cost of production, I think, is ultra important. So here's some pieces to a puzzle, and do we know how those pieces fit together? Do you understand what pieces we have on our desk or on our table, and how we're going to make those fit together, or how we're going to build that puzzle? Well, this is a big part of what I do. I get to help put those puzzle pieces together. I get to help with what's the most important risk this year? Do we have an understanding of what's that risk to us? And do we have the ability to being profitable? Do we have an ability of understanding the probability or the impact of these areas? This is a tool that we have. It's called an Ag Risk Management Projector. If we look at the left bar graph there, so the darker green, I don't know if you can see my mouse there, but the darker green is revenue. The orange and the brown between the green are the expenses. In this farm, obviously, they're barely generating enough revenue at 100% of what they're projecting to break even. And then we decrease that revenue by 10% increments to show at what point would crop insurance start paying out. So this left bar graph, they've got insurance where they've got GARS insurance, which is this Global Ag Risk Solutions in the blue, and the lighter green is AFSC or provincial crop insurance. So if they don't make 100% of their projected revenue, they're gonna have a shortfall right away, and that's going to be painful. So this is a easy way that we can help model how is your farm set up into the future, into this next crop year. If this is something that you would benefit from or would like to see, I'm in the window of time right now where we're doing a lot of these. We're preparing many of these with many of our clients to show and model what does 2026 hold. We're going to take what is your projected yield, what is your crop plan, what are we saying those commodities are going to be worth after harvest, and build a really comprehensive understanding of, is our farm going to be able to be profitable, and what's the probability of that happening. So here's a quick snapshot again. What's the revenue? Is this farm going to be successful? What's the target? What are we hoping for? And then at 80%, so the reason 80% is being used, what is at 80% crop insurance, what does that payment look like? And are we able to make money to pay at least the bills? So in 2015, you can see the target was $368 an acre. And the coverage is going to cover them to just shy of 300. Their cost of production is going to be $284 an acre. Well, they were going to be able to make $11 an acre on a 5,000 acre farm, even with their crop insurance. In 2024, target was 464. They're insured to 371, and their cost of production is no longer $284 an acre, but it's $417 an acre. So if they're going to use crop insurance to pay for their cost of production, they're going to lose $46 an acre. If they're going to just strictly rely on their crop insurance to be able to cover that cost of production. Benchmarking, one of the last stops. Do you have the ability of testing against other operations? This is if you would be taking part in our benchmarking. This is the slide that you would see. This is the graph that you would see, and we sliced them into 3 separate categories. So green on the left is the top 25%. Blue in the middle is the middle 50%. And I see there's an error there. The red on the bottom there is the bottom 25%. So we do a benchmark for crop and grain operations, and we slice this into categories like this. And obviously we want to move the operation to the left. We want them to become part of the top 25%, or at least move their average upwards along that graph. In 2024, that industry average gross margin was $234 an acre. So $234 an acre was left over to pay that labor power machinery, land building and finance, and provide a net profit. So the question I have for all of you is, do you know how you compare? Are you keeping track? Do you know the score? Do you understand where your gross margin is? So again, here's that same type of graph in the different categories, the top 25%, the middle 50, and the bottom 25. Using that same 233 was the average, but the average in the bottom 25%. And I'll attract your attention. This is what for the dark brown soil zone. There's obviously a couple different soil zones within Alberta, but the example I'm using here is the dark brown soil zone, which would be kind of in that Camrose and east and north country, I think would be known as a dark brown soil zone. The average within the middle 50% was $241 an acre. So there's a substantial difference there between the middle 50 and the bottom 25. And then the top 25% of producers had a $343 an acre gross margin. So revenue less your production expenses is where we're arriving here. So revenue less your seed, fert, and chem, and crop insurance cost. But they were left with $343 an acre at the top, through $241 in the middle, and $117 in the bottom. So where are you? Would you be able to do that calculation? Do you understand the impact of having less gross margin? That would be the questions I would have. I'll share some industry trends. Obviously, we're early into the 26 years, so we're only starting to get some of the 2025 numbers together. But here's a comparison of what we had to the end of 2024, and some of the initial information that we're getting from 2025 is it's very close to what 2024 brought from a gross margin perspective, and we might see I think we're starting to see a slight upswing. So a little bit more revenue being generated, a little not a dramatic change in expense, but yields. There was some good yields, which was really positive, and is pushing that gross margin up. But there's there's the last 10 years for us to be able to see how have gross margins been over the main three soil zones, so black, dark brown, and brown, quite close together here in 2024. Not a significant difference between the brown and the dark brown, but definitely black soil zone creating a little better gross margin. Big part of that is understanding your cost production. So we all know that there was a nice big upswing in 2022, just like we see in this graph. You see that nice big upswing in 2022 while we had phenomenal commodity prices, and that obviously dropped and is impacting the gross margin. But the other part of that equation is, do you understand or know your cost production? Cost production's raised along with those good commodity prices. Fertilizer and chemical and seed became more expensive, and there's been a slight downward trend from 23 to 24, which is really positive. And we've seen a little that continue downward trend, nothing dramatic, but a slight downward trend into 2025 as well. And I don't know if you can see this. So earnings from operations, this would be what's left over at the end of the day. There's that light gray bar right across the page there. That's net. That's zero. That's the zero line, and going below that, you're in the negative position. You're gonna have a loss at the end of the year, and we've seen many operations have losses at the end of 2024. Like I mentioned, we're seeing a plateau or a slight increase. There's our initial benchmarking information showing that we're going to be right close to zero. There's going to be some operations that are coming above that, but there's still some that are staying below net profitability. I don't know if there's any cow-calf operators in the group here today, but I thought it was important to share a little bit of what's happening there. Obviously, a really good news story in the cow-calf operations. The average, and this is from a cow-calf margin, what the margins are looking like per cow, and really strong margins per cow at that $2,000 in 2024, and we're seeing that continue upwards into 2025. So this is a really good news story in the farming industry, what livestock cow-calf operations are doing. With high feed costs, we're going to continue seeing this go higher. So that's we're just seeing some initial numbers coming in, and we're definitely seeing that trend up continue. So what are the differences? Well, we'd benchmark the exact same way in the cow-calf as we do in the cattle, or I mean in the grain. We use different aspects of that, but the top producers, they are able to generate top line revenue really well. Top producers have a really strong weaning percentage. So obviously, without that being the more calves you wean, the higher percentage of calves you wean, the better the revenue is going to be, obviously. And top producers are able to control their feed costs, and that these three categories drive profitability. So to summarize here today, financial resiliency is not achieved overnight. It is a result of deliberate planning, sound financial management, and a culture of adaptability. So it comes back to that bias. Are you able to think outside the box, use other ideas than just your own? By implementing these strategies, businesses can prepare not only to survive economic shocks and disruptions, but emerge stronger and more competitive. In a world where only constant is change, we feel financial resiliency is your business's best insurance policy and a foundation to sustainable long-term success. So good planning and preparation creates better anticipation and preparedness to respond and generate more long-term opportunities and success without all the headaches. I'll leave this on the screen here for a little bit. That's my contact information. You can reach me by cell phone. You can reach me by email. Mark Wobick is the partner on our group and he's my manager and my boss out of Lethbridge. But feel free to call or text or email if there's anything from here that you'd like to talk more about offline. I'm more than willing to take a call and chat about that and potentially maybe even how we could help. Thank you for coming today, and I appreciate you guys taking in this presentation. I see that I even stayed online on time, Kabir. I didn't go away over time.
Perfect. Yeah, awesome. That sounds good. That was an amazing presentation, David. Now we'll open the floor for Q&A. If you have any questions, feel free to type it in the Q&A section. And if there's someone who doesn't like typing, they can raise their hands and I can allow them to talk so that they can ask the questions. Is there anything else you want to add on to your presentation by the time people are typing their questions?
No, I wouldn't say I've got anything else to really add. I think there's a lot of information there that I shared there today. So it's a balancing act of oversharing and not putting anybody to sleep. But if there's a key takeaway, I would say in being prepared or going into your 2026 crop year, I would really stress understanding what your cost of production is, understanding what your revenue, top line revenue is going to be, and really testing, am I able to break a profit with what my plan is? And if it's your own spreadsheet or numbers that you're putting together on a napkin, but creating that understanding, I think, is going to be crucial. And if it's using me or our ag risk management projector, I think that one would really put you over the top and give you a good understanding, not only where's your break even, where's your cost production, and then what's my risk management plan? Is my crop insurance sufficient for what I'm doing? And what does that look like? I think those would be the key takeaways for going into 2026.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll wait another minute. If there's no questions, then I guess we can conclude the webinar. Because I don't see any questions still. Maybe you did do an amazing presentation, so
I answered everybody's questions. Nobody's got questions, eh? Well, that's okay. Oh, here we go.
Okay. Oh, somebody saying thank you. Really appreciate the presentation.
You're very welcome, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to share with all of you. Like I said, if there is a question that you'd specifically like to ask in regards to your own operations, I left my my contact information on the screen there real quick. You know what? I'm going to type my cell phone number here in the chat.
Yeah, how about you leave it on the screen so that people can yeah, I see you already wrote it. Yeah, there you go. That also works. Yeah.
Yeah, put it in there. So that's my cell phone number. If you are these available offline?
It would be all available on our YouTube channel. If you want to, you follow us on YouTube, and this is all live on YouTube, so this will stay there forever.
There you
like
go.
If anybody wants to rewatch it, they can.
There you go, everyone. If you want to go rewatch it and see the presentation there, it'll be on the YouTube channel.
Perfect. Yeah, I don't see any more questions. Okay, I will give it another minute. Before that, I have a quick announcement I like to make. So our AGM is on March 26th, and we have speakers coming, and they will be talking about 4 hours of fertility management. If there's someone who is interested and want to register, do give us a call or go to our website. Yeah, that's about it. Is there anything else you want to conclude, last minute thing you forgot to add on?
No, I don't think I forgot anything. There's obviously I shared little pieces of a whole bunch of things that we do, but they're not. We do a lot of financial modeling,
Yeah.
and for all areas. If you're in growth mode, or if you're in winding down mode, and obviously not just crop operations. We help all farming industry. So it could be
Yeah.
livestock, cattle, grain, feathers, turkeys, chicken, layers, like we do it all. So definitely have experience in all those sectors.
I think so. Linda wants to
Yeah, go
ask
ahead.
you a quick question. Yeah. Any advice on how to bring different generations together? The old school who does not see the value in good Excel spreadsheet or comparable chart versus the new school who build spreadsheet for everything.
Yeah, that's a great question, Linda. I think the starting point would be for me communication. What's the intent? I often talk about how do you set the table? Just coming at it from hey, I've built this spreadsheet, and that sometimes would close the ears, but I would more so come at it from do we understand? I'd like to present a plan. Do we understand this aspect of our farm? And I'll use an example of cost reduction, because I've really nailed that down here today. But do we understand what it's costing us to put the crop in? I'd like to be able to show this and model this. And sometimes it's bringing in a third party like myself to help have that conversation. But I would say communication at the beginning stages of the intention behind it is key, because sometimes that old school avoiding change mentality is that exact bias that I talked about. I think that's incredibly important to understand that change is going to happen, and it's happening all around us. And the more quickly we can adapt to change, the more adapt we are to be able to continue to be successful. So I'd love to talk more in on a phone call with you, Linda. If you wanted to call me, I'd love to be able to explore this more if you wanted to. But I hope that answered your question.
Okay. I do have one of my board members. They want to again urge me for the people to register for our AGM. There would be free lunch and a chance to meet the board. And do come for our AGM. And we do have a lot of good speakers coming, and they will be talking about 4 hours of fertility management. So yeah, I, I don't think so. There's more questions.
Yeah,
Okay,
Linda,
I
go
guess
ahead.
we should.
Go
Yeah.
ahead and give me a call when it's convenient for you. That'd be great.
Okay, I guess I should then conclude the webinar.
Very
Thank
good.
you, David, for answering those questions and an amazing presentation. It was truly a pleasure to have you with us today. That brings an end to our webinar. Thank you all for attending. We hope you found this information useful and informative, and you enjoyed the discussion. If you have any feedback or suggestions for the future topics, feel free to share them via email. And have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you at our AGM.
Thank you very
Perfect. Thank
much.
you so much. Yeah.